Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Mr. Pad Paramahamsa, Padurikacharya Ashtoto, the Shishimada Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Vishnupad Paramahamsa, Padurikacharya Ashtoto, the Shishimada Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavini Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Shri Isopanisad Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay, just give me this. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay. On this 23rd day of December 2019 in SanDiego, we're reading from Sri Isopanisad, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are beginning mantra 10. Anyade bahu vidyaya nyadahu avidyaya iti shushrumadhiranam yenastan vichachakshire anyade bahu vidyaya nyadahu avidyaya iti shushrumadhiranam yenastan vichachakshire anyade bahu vidyaya nyadahu avidyaya iti shushrumadhiranam yenastan vichachakshire. Anyadevahu vidyaya Nyadahura vidyaya Iti shushmadhiranam Yenastan vijachakshire Anyadevahu vidyaya Nyadahura vidyaya Iti shushmadhiranam Yenastan vijachakshire. Go ahead. Anyadevahu vidyaya Nyadahura vidyaya Iti shushmadhiranam Yenastan vijachakshire. Anyadevahu vidyaya Nyadahura vidyaya Iti shushmadhiranam Yenastan vijachakshire. Jamal. Anyadevahu vidyaya Nyadahura vidyaya Iti shushmadhiranam Yenastan vijachakshire. Anyadevahu vidyaya Nyadahura vidyaya Iti shushmadhiranam Yenastan vijachakshire. Go ahead, Darshan. Anyadevahu vidyaya Nyadahura vidyaya Iti shushmadhiranam Yenastan vijachakshire. Anyat, different. Eva, certainly. Ahu, said. Vidyaya, by culture of knowledge. Anyat, different. Ahu, said. Avidyaya, by culture of nescience. Iti, thus. Shushuma, I heard. Dhiranam, from the sober. Ye, who. Naha, to us. Tat, that. Vichachakshire, explained. The wise have explained that one result is derived from the culture of knowledge, and that a different result is obtained from the culture of nescience. Purport. As advised in chapter 13 of the Bhagavad Gita, 13:8-12, one should cultivate knowledge in the following way. So these are, how many? 20? These are 18 points of knowledge explained in these verses, these 3 verses, 4 verses, 5 verses. 1. One should become a perfect gentleman and learn to give proper respect to others. 2. One should not pose himself as a religionist simply for name and fame. 3. One should not become a source of anxiety to others by the actions of his body, by the thoughts of his mind, or by his words. 4. One should learn forbearance even in the face of provocation from others. 5. One should learn to avoid duplicity in his dealings with others. 6. One should search out a bona fide spiritual master who can lead him gradually to the stage of spiritual realization, and one must submit himself to such a spiritual master, render him service, and ask relevant questions. 7. In order to approach the platform of self-realization, one must follow the regulative principles enjoined in the revealed scriptures. 8. One must be fixed in the tenets of the revealed scriptures. 9. One should completely refrain from practices which are detrimental to the interest of self-realization. 10. One should not accept more than he requires for the maintenance of the body. 11. One should not falsely identify himself with the gross material body, nor should one consider those who are related to his body to be his own. 12. One should always remember that as long as he has a material body, he must face the miseries of repeated birth, old age, disease, and death. There is no use in making plans to get rid of these miseries of the material body. The best course is to find out the means by which one may regain his spiritual identity. 13. One should not be attached to more than the necessities of life required for spiritual advancement. 14. One should not be more attached to wife, children, and home than the revealed scriptures ordain. 15. One should not be happy or distressed over desirables and undesirables, knowing that such feelings are just created by the mind. 16. One should become an unalloyed devotee of the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, and serve him with rapt attention. 17. One should develop a liking for a residence in a secluded place with a calm and quiet atmosphere, favorable for spiritual culture, and one should avoid congested places where non-devotees congregate. And 18. One should become a scientist or philosopher and conduct research into spiritual knowledge, recognizing that spiritual knowledge is permanent, whereas material knowledge ends with the death of the body. These 18 items combine to form a gradual process by which real knowledge can be developed. Except for these, all other methods are considered to be in the category of nescience. And that's part of the verses that Krishna says, that last statement. That's in the Bhagavad Gita. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, a great acharya, maintained that all forms of material knowledge are merely external features of the illusory energy, and that by culturing them one becomes no better than an ass. This same principle is found here in Sri Isopanisad. By advancement of material knowledge, modern man is simply being converted into an ass. Some materialistic politicians in spiritual guise decry the present system of civilization as satanic, but unfortunately they do not care about the culture of real knowledge as it is described in the Bhagavad Gita. Thus they cannot change the satanic situation. In the modern society, even a boy thinks himself self-sufficient and pays no respect to elderly men. Due to the wrong type of education being imparted in our universities, boys all over the world are giving their elders headaches. Thus, Sri Isopanisad very strongly warns that the culture of nescience is different from that of knowledge. The universities are, so to speak, centers of nescience only. Consequently, scientists are busy discovering lethal weapons to wipe out the existence of other countries. University students today are not given instructions in the regulative principles of brahmacharya, celibate student life, nor do they have any faith in any scriptural injunctions. Religious principles are taught for the sake of name and fame only, and not for the sake of practical action. Thus there is animosity not only in social and political fields, but in the field of religion as well. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So, here Isopanisad is giving us a strong encouragement to cultivate real knowledge, and saying that without that we'll be culturing the ignorance, nescience, and that will lead us to a difficult place. Basically birth and death in this material world. And Srila Prabhupada refers to this section in the chapter 13 of the Bhagavad Gita, which gives these 18 divisions of knowledge. And there's different kinds of knowledge. This knowledge is all practical knowledge for culturing the devotional service. It doesn't mention anything about the difference between the material energy and the spiritual energy here. We're not learning about how the creation took place, but what we're learning is practical instructions on how to progress in devotional service. So, amanitvam adambitvam. This is the first section. Amanitvam adambitvam. These are the first statements. So amanitvam means free of false pride. We know the third verse of the Shikshastaka is so essential for chanting purely. Trinada pisunichena, toror api sahishnuna, amanina, manadena, kirtani eksadahari. This amanina. Mana means false pride. So that's the very first principle of knowledge. One has to recognize that I don't know. That I don't know the method for my best welfare. Remember again, referring back to Hare Krishna, to 2.7. This is where Arjuna changes the presentation. In the whole first chapter, he's trying to give some justification why he doesn't want to fight in the battle, right? And he even cites the Vedas. He cites that I'll be the source of women becoming unprotected, Varna Sankara, I'll be the cause of the stoppage of certain rights, and so I'm going to gain so much sinful reaction, and the people who suffer from this war are also going to gain sinful reaction, so I don't want to be part of it. He's citing the Vedas. So that goes on, and then even at the beginning of this chapter 2, and Krishna speaks, and he says, get up, give up this unmanliness, it doesn't become you, you're not going to gain heaven by this. This is more or less Kshatriya talk. This could be taking place on any of the chariots. If any of the fighters in that battle were feeling hesitant to fight. But it doesn't work. So Arjuna continues to complain that no, Guru Nahatpa Himahana Bhavan is better, even though these people, they're worshipable for me, my teacher, the grandfather, even if they're after the kingdom, I don't think I can counteract them with arrows. I don't think I can shoot them. This is all he's saying. And so he says, all right, I'm stuck. And then, text 7, Ikarpanya dosho pahata svabhava prachami tvam dharma samura cheta. Ayakshe eksyanishitam bruhitam shishyastehem sharimam tam prapannam. So he changes. He changes his whole aspect there. Instead of complaining on the level of a Kshatriya, he's surrendering on the level of a disciple. And he's saying, I'm completely bewildered about what real Dharma is. In other words, he needs knowledge to be confident. He needs sure knowledge, and he's got the best source that there can ever be, Krishna himself as his guru. So, and then the real instruction of Bhagavad Gita starts. So the first thing is this giving of respect, this defeating our false pride, amanitvam, and or amanina, manadena, and this is expressed in the third verse of the Shikshastika, to have no respect for oneself and offer all respect to others. Now, the first respect one has to offer to others is to the spiritual master. One has to find someone who you can trust, and then surrender, serve, and ask questions. This is in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, text 34. Very important. Tadvidhi, if you want to understand all I've been speaking about, different sacrifices and everything, tadvidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya ubidekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshinaha. Tattvadarshina literally means one who has seen the truth. In other words, a realized soul. Someone who's got direct experience. And then what's the means of approach? Pranipatena. The first thing is the surrendering. Surrendering your false pride. Surrendering your idea that I got some ideas, you got some ideas, let's change. No, it doesn't work like that. Surrendering and serving and then asking questions. The service is very important because that's the proof that you're actually feeling humble. And so one should become a perfect gentleman, learn to give respect to others. Now Prabhupada in his purport is kind of very charming. This is written in the 50s, and he's in India. But already he's speaking, as if he had come to America and seen the state of things. But it was happening even in India. He says that in modern society, even a boy thinks himself self-sufficient, pays no respect to elderly men. So Prabhupada must have had some experience with that in his efforts to preach. Due to the wrong type of education being imparted in our universities, boys all over the world are giving their elders headaches. So the general culture in India is that you offer respect to elders, in general. I mean, if you're younger, just because of their years and they're meant to have some wisdom, what to speak of the spiritual master, So that's the first. So how's it go? Amanatvam adambitvam. Now this should not pose themselves as a religion as simply for name and fame. This is the famous damba. That is the first quality of the demons you'll find in text 16. Dambo darpo bimanascha. You read chapter 16. After Krishna describes the saintly qualities in the first 3 verses, there's like 22 of them, I think, at least. And then he says, now I'm going to describe the demonic qualities. Dambo darpo bhimanascha. Notice the word abhimana. There's the word man again. Very proud. Darpa, very vain. And damba means posing oneself as a religion is simply for name and fame. This is the hypocrisy. It's rampant today. You don't know who to trust. The lies are flowing like water from everybody. You see how disturbing that is. Even in material things, you have no. Everyone seems to be out to run a game on you, isn't it? And so the people, what does it do for the mass of people? They have no shelter, and so they go to one place, and today's one site, this site. And you develop some trust there, and people know that they take advantage of that. So one should recognize one's real state, which is that we're in ignorance. We're helpless. We need help. That's wonderful. Your spiritual master. What's the meaning of Hare Krishna mantra? You too. I need help. Help. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. This is the mood we should chant in also. This desperation, Lord Chaitanya is teaching us. What is it? I've fallen into this horrible ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up. I'm helpless here. Please pick me up and put me as an atom at your lotus feet. Now, how does that pick me up work? Krishna comes once every 8.5 billion years, but mostly he leaves his books, the Bhagavad Gita and other books, and he always has a representative who one can approach. Now, that wasn't so obvious before Prabhupada came to the West. Who are you going to approach? I approached someone who looked like a guru, Baba Ramdas. A moment of silence. He's passed away. I don't know if you know. But in those days, in the 60s, there were this one claiming to be the leader, this one claiming people would go there, and he wrote that book, Be Here Now, which I must admit, was important in getting me interested in spiritual things and so forth. Hare Krishna was in there. Probably still in print. I mean, back when you read it too, Alex? Yeah. I mean, it really kind of fascinates you and gets you going on spiritual quest. That's the effect it had on me. But really, you need more. You need the absolute, sure, steady, tried and true way. From someone who's experienced the whole program. So adambadvam, ahimsa, chanted Arjuna. One should not become a source of anxiety or to others by the actions of his body, by the thoughts of his mind, or by his words. That's the famous ahimsa. It appears in one other place in the Gita also. Now, Mahatma Gandhi tried to make that the point of the Gita. That's not the point of the Gita, but it's one of the principles in certain contexts that one should do. Just like our default is completely nonviolent, right? Some little bug during the summer, they find their way on the floor here, and we don't just crush him and throw him away. No, try to pick him up by the tissue and throw him out so he doesn't get trampled. Of course, what a way to go, right? You get trampled by the lotus feet of the devotees while chanting japa. But still, you're aware, this is a living entity. So that kind of concept, what to speak of, the cows and all the other, we wouldn't dream of harming. So that's an important principle, because causing harm to others is one of the main ways in which people accrue sinful reactions today, even unknowingly. I mean, I just take back my life. I didn't even think twice. Where does the hamburger meat come from? It comes from the supermarket. I had no, I didn't feel that behind that there was this living, breathing, conscious being who suffered like anything to give me a hamburger. It just wasn't they don't teach you that, right? and so notice how this is the point here, is that ignorance is the source of suffering. Because by ignorance, this is right in the Nectar of Devotion, right in the beginning. By ignorance, you inevitably commit sin, even unknowingly. Horrendous sin, and you have to suffer for it. It's like Prabhupada's famous analogy of the child putting his hand in the fire. He doesn't know, he's curious. He doesn't know he's curious. And because of that ignorance, it made the father say, "Okay, do it." He puts it in. That was the last time. That's the last time he puts his hand in the fire. Now he's got realized knowledge, right? But the idea is that there are so many things we need knowledge of to avoid our progressive entanglement in this material world. So that complete and unmotivated knowledge, that's essential for a successful human life. Otherwise, you're just groping around in ignorance, and you're bound to commit all kinds of sin and do all kinds of things that are to your detriment. It's just like now's the flu season, So they tell you, oh, be sure to get your shot. I'm not going to get into the positive or negatives of getting a shot. But there are ways to try to avoid getting sick. So, and with that knowledge, you have a better chance of avoiding the suffering than if you don't have the knowledge. I mean, for years, right, during the Dark Ages in Europe, they had no idea about germs. And so they didn't wash their hands after passing and, like that. And of course, the vast, diseases, the bubonic plague just decimated Europe, out of ignorance. Then I remember the name, at third grade, I learned the name Leeuwenhoek. He was looking through some little bead of glass and he looked at a drop of water. Whoa, what are all those little beings in there we didn't see before? And, he went into the microscope and they were able to see, they're little germs and bacteria. Maybe they have something to do with the diseases, And so gradually they built up all this knowledge. So the same thing holds for the subtle science of how to live in this world to avoid karma, especially bad karma, but Krishna, any karma. And more to the point, the one and only way that you can eradicate latent karma that's your due to suffer. And that's only by bhakti. And Krishna talks about that in the 4th chapter, about how knowledge, real knowledge, burns to ashes all the karma. That you look up in that. So getting this knowledge is so important. These verses is worth studying just on their own. And then ahimsa, one should not become the source of anxiety for others' actions. Learn chantir. Now there's different words for tolerance, because there's different kinds of things you have to tolerate. Tatiksha, the very word itself, gives you it's kind of an onomatopoeia, an onomatopoeia, a word that means what it sounds like. Splash. There's all kinds of, there's many of them in English. So tatiksha, they're in Sanskrit also, means someone's, a pin strikes you, tatiksha, but you tolerate it. You're able to go on without losing your equilibrium. In other words, you have a high pain tolerance. Like the soldiers know that, they develop that. Otherwise, how can you go to battle? So that's one kind of tolerance. Another is chantir, which means more or less forgiveness. Someone's sharp words, especially if they're related to you or you're a friend, can hurt more than any kind of physical thing. That's in the Shastra also. Sharp words. So how to tolerate that? Well, that's called forgiveness, kshantir, and that's a point here. One should learn forbearance even in the face of propagation from others. That's the next middle, chantir. Arjavam, simplicity, straightforwardness. One should learn to avoid duplicity in his dealings with others. Now you can see how that and hypocrisy and damba go together. A lot of these qualities, they feed off each other. So that's arjavam, simplicity, rather than saying one thing, doing another, trying to be something you're not, So that's an important thing to avoid. Ahimsa chantam evacham arjanja. Let me look at some of the others. Oh, and then approaching a spiritual master. Acharyopasanam. Acharyopasanam means worshipping the acharya. Now, what does that word acharya mean? Every Sanskrit word is sometimes so full of meaning that are not immediately apparent. So acharya comes from the word achar, which means behavior. And so there's a definition of acharya. It's mentioned twice in the first chapter, I believe, of the Adi Leela, which is all about the spiritual masters. Notice plural. He made different kinds of spiritual masters. Shiksha, instruction gurus, Diksha, initiating gurus. There's Vartma Pradarshika Guru. I can say that maybe. Bhagavan Dasa was one of my Pradarshika gurus. Someone who shows you the way, who gets you going on the path. You know, there's always someone give you a book or something, you know, as a mantra card. What does it say? Yeah, so Acharyopasanam means worshipping the Acharya. Now Acharya has these three elements. To be completely steeped in the knowledge of the relevant shastras. In other words, the books like Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Brihad Bhagavatamrita, others that we have. So be very well versed, to follow them strictly, all the principles in the sacred books, and to take the trouble to preach to others, to teach others, share that. That's the Acharya. If someone is Bhajananandi, we call him Bhajananandi, and just has read the books of knowledge, but then simply does one's own bhajan, maybe goes to Vrindavan, that's okay, and that's fine. But it's not following in the mood of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who himself took the trouble. He went to Puri, he took sannyas. It's interesting because then he was going to Vrindavan, just for the purpose of just being completely, in ecstasy, in the mood of Radharani, But he didn't get to Vrindavan. The whole story, it's quite interesting, is that Nityananda and Acharya, and Advaita Acharya, they conspired to bring him back to Shantipur because all the devotees didn't have a chance to say goodbye, especially his mother. And so they tricked him. You know the story? He's walking. It's 3 days. He's not eating anything. Fasting for 3 days, going through the jungle. Nityananda was with him, and so he gets to the Ganges, the Ganges, and I forget it was Advaita's idea maybe to tell Nityananda to tell him it's the Yamuna, that he's already gotten to Vrindavan because he's been in this trance. He doesn't quite know where he is. So he says, "Oh, look, we've come on the Yamuna. Oh, there's the Yamuna." He chanced a verse about it, And actually, Nityananda, there was some boys there. And he said, "You tell Lord Chaitanya that this is the Yamuna." He says, "Oh, I've come to the Yamuna, And then he sees Advaita coming in a rowboat. He said, "How'd you get to the Yamuna?" Because he knows he's way back in Shantipur. So. They said, "Please just get in the boat," and like that. And so actually Advaita said, "Well, actually this is the Yamuna." Because, the story? It's interesting. Because, the Triveni, right? At Prayag, at Allahabad, that's where they have the Magh Mela all the time, the Kumbh Mela. That's where the Yamuna and the Ganges come together, and they flow together. The Saraswati's there in a subtle form. Triveni. So the Ganges is coming from the north, and the Yamuna is coming from a little bit of the south, and they flow together. So he's saying, yes, the Ganges came from the north, and here's flowing a little bit east to west, and so the Ganges is on the north side, and the Yamuna is on the south side, as if the waters, had kept their identity as the different, all the way down to Bengal. Anyway, whatever it is, he got in the boat, he came back to the Shantipur, and there was a wonderful meeting with all the devotees. His mother was there. He's completely shaved up. Coping the whole thing with the Nityananda, and she takes him on her lap, and he's crying. And he says, "Oh, mother, whatever you want me to do, I'll do. I took this sannyas as madness. I shouldn't, because she's left alone now. Her husband had died. Her elder son Vishwarup had gone south, and he also passed away. And so all she's got left is who is the second wife? Vishnupriya, thank you. Yeah, well, my brain is going. But Lord Chaitanya was everything. And when Vishwarup had left, Lord Chaitanya said, "Don't worry, I'll take care of you. I'm not going anywhere." But he had to. So then he more or less apologized, and she knew that it would be a great black mark on his reputation if he had then come home after taking sannyas. That wouldn't work. She says, "Okay, just stay in Puri, which is not that far from Bengal, and I'll get news of you. Set up your headquarters there." So he accepted that. So that means instead of going to Vrindavan, he changes all his plans, and he goes to Puri, right? And then he meets Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya and converts him from Mayavad to his follower. He shows him the 6-arm form. There's all kinds of wonderful conversations there. and he sees Jagannath, of course, and but then he doesn't hang around. He goes south. He goes on a tour for 2 years to South India preaching, taking the trouble to spread Krishna consciousness. People would just see him chanting, and they would become ecstatic. They would become full of prema, and then they in turn would go back to their village and chant, and they would make other devotees, and so he's spreading Krishna consciousness. But the point is that he showed by his example. Now this is the God himself, Krishna. He showed but he's in the role of a devotee, and so he showed the necessity of taking the trouble to preach. You see, and at a certain point he did retire to Puri, and for 12 years he just chanted and danced and showed the highest levels of bhakti. But not before he had done all this preaching, converted the Mayavadis in Varanasi. Prakashananda taught Rupa and Sanatan for 2 months and Rupa for 10 days, and got the whole movement going. So he's the perfect acharya. Then in order to approach the platform of civilization, one must follow the regulative principles enjoined in the revealed scriptures. So this is a very important point of surrender. The 6 principles. The first is anukulyasya sankalpa pratikulyasya varjanam. This itself is like, separating those who are just dabblers from those who are sincere. To accept everything, and they're still striving to accept everything that's favorable. Now it's interesting. I was just thinking about this today because I heard Prabhupada chant these first 2, and actually the first 4 elements of surrender on a lecture. Anukulyasya sankalpa pratikulyasya varjanam. The first one is accepting what is favorable before you give up what is unfavorable. And isn't that how it works? You come to the Sunday feast, you're not ready to give anything up. You're coming to check things out. And if you accept, the most important essential part was just chanting. In other words, you're hearing and maybe even repeating. That's the beginning of your surrender. Because you're letting Krishna in through the sound. You see what I'm saying? Darshan, you with us here? What's going on? Okay. So by that acceptance of the favorable, you get the spiritual strength to negate the unfavorable. You see how it works? That was Prabhupada's great genius. And that's, Krishna consciousness. Come to the Sunday feast, free feast, and of course he was cooking and training up his cooks, and it was kind of food people had never tasted before, and so they would come back just for that. But some were, they're curious, and they come a little early. There's the kirtan, there's the lecture, and so they know they got to sit through that lecture to get to the Sunday feast. Says okay, so they're getting purified anyway. So they're accepting the feast, free feast. Okay, well that's easy to accept. But in the process, they're performing the necessary preliminary purification and getting attracted by Krishna. And countless devotees became devotees by that, and by that method. So the first is accepting what's favorable. Not everything that's favorable, but some things that are favorable. At least, the holy name. And by that, Krishna works from within the heart. He gives you purity enough to be interested and curious about what's the philosophy behind this experience I've had. I heard about this mantra, because I knew, Allen Ginsberg was chanting it. But now I'm really getting more experience, so I really want to find out about it. And there's all these books that explain it. So that's anukulyasya pratikulyasya varjanam. Then to get serious, you have to, give up those things which are impediments. For regular principles, can be very difficult. But if you're really progressing and you're reading and you understand philosophy, well, that's what it takes. That's what it takes, and that's a big boost. Everything becomes sweeter and more meaningful and powerful when you're actually giving up those things that are huge impediments to devotional service. So that's one should completely refrain from practices that are detrimental. One should not accept more than he requires for maintenance of the body. So this is also part of the principle of simplicity. One of the aspects that we learn from the Upadeshamrita, which is also a very practical guide in how to advance in devotional service. 11 verses, very important. So, what are those 6 principles? We can all chant together. Pratyahara priyasascha prajalpo niyamagraha janasangascha lauryam cha shadbi bhakti pranashyati. What does pranashyati mean? Who can say? Complete destruction. When you see the prefix of pra, it's always an intensifier. Prabhupada would even explain this particular prefix, prakrishta rupena. He would say prakrishta rupena, which means that it amplifies. So what the 6 which expand into 8, prakrishta rupena. It means that pra, amplifies the form of something. I have to. Not Krishna, but Krishta. Prakrishta rupena. It's a technical Sanskrit term. So, atyahara. Now, there's two forms, Janardhan. What are those 2 meanings of atyahara? Do you know? Anyone know? Besides Balaram? Yes, Prabhu. And? Overeating. Ahara means to consume. So, over collecting means I'll collect it now and consume it later, right? It's the same idea. So that's the very first one that's mentioned here. One should not accept more than he requires for maintenance of the body. Priyasas, hard labor for material things. One has to arrange a life in such a way. If you're living as simply as possible, then you have to work as little as possible on the material side. They work together. So hard labor for material things also destroys. Atyahara priyasas cha prajalbo. Nonsense talk. We're surrounded by nonsense talk. The Tower of Babel, known as the Internet, right? It's so present everywhere. I remember when I joined the temple back in the 73 in Brooklyn. There was no TVs, there were no radios. There was a phone which they had to encourage you, please call your mother. She doesn't know where you are, or something like that, like that. So that was it. It's not like we had so many things it was a whole different world. You really were entering a Vaikuntha atmosphere. What did you hear when you walked through the halls? Prabhupada lectures constantly. Prabhupada lectures or bhajan. Yeah. Ati ahara. Ati means a lot, extensive or intensive. And ahara means to eat. Ahara nidja bhayamaitanangcha. Eating, sleeping, bathing, defending. So ati ahara means eating more than you need. And I'm not sure why or how it's also expanded into collecting. Because collecting things, it's a kind of consumption, even on a subtle level. Oh, I'll consume it later. So that in itself is detrimental. But ati is a lot, is intensifying. So, prajalpo, engaging, speaking nonsense or hearing nonsense. This destroys your bhakti, depending on how much you do it. It's so dangerous because you get into that materialistic mood and you can easily get into the critical mood, which is so much of what prajalpa is gossiping and criticizing. And that it's very, very dangerous, that blaspheming devotees, especially. So, niyamagraha, that's another one that expands into 2. Niyama agraha means to not follow carefully the regulative principles, getting up early and washing and bathing and all of the things that you need to follow and taught in order to facilitate your devotional service. You cut corners, and the other part of that is niyamagraha, which is that you're there but in physically only. Your mind isn't in it, your heart isn't in it. You're just sort of going through the motions. That's it. So either of those, not actually being there, which is obviously fatal, or being there in name only, which soon, believe me, soon leads to not being there, where you can see some of it. And one thing I've seen over the years is that mood is often a result of some offense, because Krishna he definitely is going to punish you if you offend devotees, and what will happen is first you lose your taste. All you were chanting and dancing before, somehow it doesn't move you. Your chanting is, your mind is a million miles away. You don't have the taste, The whole interest, that's how Krishna kicks you out. So we should be very careful of that. Yeah, you become static. Okay, I'm here, My watch, look at my phone. Yeah, you don't move. So they all work together, these things. It's like a syndrome. Niyamagra and Niyamagraha. So we have to follow carefully, and we have to be here now, with your mind, and your heart, and everything. And that's why I always encourage, and I'd like to start doing that again. Now it's too late. Going through some of our main, the things that we sing every day, but we may not know what the words mean. Probably don't know what all the words mean, right? But that's a very important part of being there with the thing. If you know what sangsara, dhava, nadadida, loka, tranaya means, then you'll immediately feel great gratitude to the spiritual master or spiritual masters. It means we're burning in this fire of birth and death. Sangsara, dhava. Dhava anala is literally a forest fire of samsara. Samsara is an English word now, birth and death. Lida loka, all the people are lidha, suffering. Lida is suffering. Loka, people in general, including us. Tranaya. Tranaya means to deliver. You're delivering us from this. So if someone, you're in a forest fire and the guy comes down in a helicopter and saves you and pulls you up. Thank you so much. You may even try to hug him even though he's at the controls. You know what I'm saying? In other words, that anyone who's helping you avoid a tremendous danger, you immediately have a relationship of gratitude. So we should feel that. But if the meaning isn't there, then the feeling isn't going to be there. And all of the verses, the Sanskrit is so concentrated meaning. One verse. I've been going on this one verse for the last week or so. Somehow it struck me. I was reading the latter part of the 10th canto, the battle of Krishna and Shiva. When Manasura is there, I don't know if you know all the pastimes, he had 1,000 arms, and he pleased Krishna by playing 500 drums while Shiva's dancing. Can you imagine? 500 drums all in time? Yeah, just for the drum. Maybe he had a few kartals. 1,000 arms. So Shiva blessed him. Anyway, it's a long story, but eventually there was a battle. Krishna came and he was battling Shiva. There was two jwars. Jwars means fever weapons, but fever can also be cold. So Krishna's Narayan jwar was cold, and Shiva's jwar was very hot, but as Prabhupada said, the cold defeats the hot. So the Shiva jwar was defeated, and then Shiva offered these prayers, and near the end of the prayers comes this verse, which I think is a verse we can all embrace, we should think about. It says, the first verse, Yas tvam visvajate martya atmanam priyamishwaram viparyendriyartartam vishamat jamitam chajan, which means that mortal being, ourselves, martya, a martya, who gives up you, my Lord. He's speaking directly to Vishnu. This is or Krishna. This is Shiva speaking. Who gives you up for the sake of the object of the senses. Gives you up. You who are Atmanam Piyamishwaram, who are their very self, who are so dear to every soul, and who is their Lord and Master, their loving Lord and Master. What does he give you up for? For the sake of the objects of the senses, which are just the opposite of these things, which are not dear self, not dear, and not your Lord, in other words. Is like what such a person does is gives up, rejects the nectar, and eats poison. Visham ati amitam chajan. It's a very simple verse, but it's something we should really consider. So anyway, it's getting late. We'll go through these principles of knowledge next time. Does anyone have one comment we can maybe, or a question? This Isopanisad is very rich. This was the book that they had. I'm listening to the lectures on this book. Prabhupada gave in 1970 in L.A. There was no Bhagavatams printed yet, except his original Bhagavatams. And so he gave lectures on Isopanisad. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mentioned something about not disturbing others by your body, your words, but also your mind.
Mm-hmm.
Or your thoughts specifically. So maybe you could comment on that idea, because you could say, hey, well, I'm not disturbing anybody with my body, I'm not disturbing anybody with my words. What about this idea, oh, you're disturbing someone's your thoughts? It's like a subtle...
Well, there is that aspect, of creating a certain subtle bad vibration that is detrimental, that is harmful. But practically speaking, if you're always thinking bad about someone, it's going to come out, at least in your expression, and probably at a certain point in your words, isn't it? Even if it's just what you don't say, like everyone's Haribol Prabhu, Haribol Prabhu, and you've had this particular Prabhu, you don't say anything. You haven't really said anything. You certainly haven't struck him, but that the mind manifests in the words and in the actions. So don't start. Don't let it start. Krishna consciousness. One of the main things that you learn over the years is the great blessing of not holding a grudge. And you look how that produces so much strife in the world at large. I remember in the early 90s when there were these wars in the Balkans started, the former Yugoslavia. I don't know if most of you weren't, maybe you weren't even born. But you remember, Darshan. You remember that? All after Sarajevo was under siege for like years, and the Serbians and the Bosnians, and they're going, it's horrible. And I read about that. I keep up with these things. And it was like the Muslims had taken over like 400, 500 years ago, and now finally they're getting, those who had suffered from that, they kept the grudge going from, father to son, and now they're going to get a chance to get back, That's Kali Yuga. That's Kali Yuga, So if someone does offend you or you feel they did you wrong, the best thing to do is to forgive them, if you can. But the main thing is to aspire for that forgiveness, and that you won't hold this grudge in your heart, because that'll just crush your bhakti creeper, So that's what we're talking about. That's one of the aspects of knowledge. This chanti. Yeah, even physically we get pointed. So that's keep some evil thought in your mind is poisoning your own life. So what to speak of creating a... That's why we're here, because we developed a oppositional attitude in the spiritual world. We were creating disharmony, or threatening to. And Krishna said, no, you can have your own place, and to learn your lesson. So now we're trying to complete that learning of the lesson. Become harmonious again. Okay, we have to say, all glories to Srila Prabhupada.